Hello and welcome to the penultimate part of my Hugo PS2 retrospective series, where today we're going to be taking a look at Agent Hugo Hula Holiday. Now, before we dive into this one, I just want to take a moment to clarify a couple of things, because in my last video I gave some slightly inaccurate information about the developers of this game. So, let's go through the history of Hugo Games. The Hugo games for the most part have been developed and published by a company called ITE Media. ITE Media was founded in 1988, but at that point was named Silver Rock Productions and became ITE Media in 1992. This company created Hugo as an interactive TV show in 1990, and I think it's safe to say that it kinda blew up and was hugely successful in European countries. Until the year 2002, the same year Hugo the Evil Mirror was released on the PS1, everything was pretty straightforward. ITE Media had developed and published every Hugo game up until that point. It's in 2002 that ITE Media was sold to a company called Olicom after gradually losing money over the years, possibly due to Hugo becoming less popular and interactive TV being on the decline. Olicom made huge cuts to ITE Media and restructured the company, basically meaning they fired a lot of staff members in order to save money. The next game to be released, on a PlayStation system at least, was Hugo Bookazum, the first Hugo game on the PS2. And this company restructuring could explain the decline in quality I've been witnessing while covering the PS2 games. ITE Media basically stayed the same until 2006 when it was sold yet again to a company called NDS Group. And this is where ITE Media was renamed to NDS Denmark because the NDS Group wanted them to be under their branding. NDS Denmark published one single game, Agent Hugo Hula Holiday, before closing down in 2010 for good. The reason that Agent Hugo Lemon Twist and Agent Hugo Hula Holiday were developed by different companies is probably because of ITE Media and NDS Denmark's company status. While they were going through this company restructuring and changing the name and being purchased by another company, I doubt they had time to actually do the development themselves. Either way, after NDS Denmark closed the doors in 2010, the rights to Hugo were up in the air for a while, but eventually they were purchased by Krea Media, who made the last Hugo game released on the PS2, which we'll be covering next time, called Hugo Magic in the Troll Woods. Krea Media then opened up a new sub-company devoted to making Hugo games, which was imaginatively called Hugo Games, who upon getting control of the Hugo series, took it in a new direction, making mobile apps based on the original Hugo games, which were mostly all mini-games. In 2012, Krea Media was purchased by another company called Egmont Group, but oddly, Hugo Games and the license for the Hugo property weren't a part of this agreement, which as far as I'm aware actually means that Hugo Games is no longer owned by a parent company, but rather is seemingly now an independent company. More recently, during the time I've been creating these Hugo reviews actually, in 2018, Hugo Games purchased a company called Fifth Planet Games, another company specialising in mobile gaming, and Hugo Games actually merged with this company and changed its own name to Fifth Planet Games. Some reasons for this are that Hugo is only one of the characters they have a focus on and they don't want to be tied to that one series anymore. Fifth Planet Games is a company which has more of a name for itself in America, which is obviously a huge market for mobile gaming. And they seemingly don't think Hugo is relevant enough anymore when compared to the other series they're working on, like Doodle Jump, Vikings and Dawn of the Dragons. In other words, the possibility of seeing a new Hugo game anytime soon is incredibly unlikely, and even if it were to happen, it would most probably only be a mobile game anyway. But you never know, mobile games are sometimes ported to the Nintendo Switch, so it's possible that if there was to be a new Hugo game, it would be on the Switch this time. Anyway, I thought I would clear all of that up because in my last review I said that Agent Hugo Hula Holiday is the first game in the series to not have any involvement with ITE Media, but that technically isn't true, it's just that at this point they had changed the name to NDS Denmark. Also, despite what information I could find online, Hula Holiday wasn't developed by NDS Denmark. It was actually developed by a company called Attractive Games and published by NDS Denmark. Geez, that took a while to get through. But now, let's get started with the actual game, shall we? So, Agent Hugo Hula Holiday begins with a cutscene, but unlike the previous games in the series, it actually doesn't have voice acting and the characters introduced in the Agent Hugo universe are absent. It's much more simple, just showing Hugo inexplicably floating in the sea, he spots some bad guys doing stuff on an island, and heads over there. It's actually quite sloppily put together and doesn't put across what's happening very well. I feel like a lot more detail could have been put into the story to make it seem more in line with the previous games in the series, as well as develop the characters a bit. It could have been that after saving the world as a risk agent 3 times now, Hugo wants a break and goes on holiday. Little does he know, Miss All-Too-Bright sends him to an island which is overrun by trash robots, and Hugo discovers to his dismay that he's been roped into going on another mission. He's then supplied with a water pistol created by W and told about his situation over a radio, and then the game begins. So if this would have happened, it would have turned Hugo into a bit more of a reluctant hero because he just wants a break. And that could have been used to comedic effect throughout the whole game. Like, he doesn't really care about stopping the bad guy this time because he just wants to relax. He has his own motive to stop the enemy rather than just doing it to save the island. I think that would have been a lot more interesting. As it stands though, he's just there for no reason. He has a water gun for no reason, and everything just seems to be happening for no reason. We don't know what this bad guy is actually doing or why we need to stop him, and we don't know who Hugo is if we disregard what we know about him from the other games. What's weird as well is that we aren't actually told what we're supposed to be doing. We seem to be building musical instruments to make the vegetables on the island happy, but I have no idea what this has to do with anything or why Hugo's bothering to do that. Anyway, the actual game is yet again a 3D platformer, but with a couple of distinct differences from Lemon Twist. Firstly, this game ditches the linear fixed camera sections that made Lemon Twist feel a bit too much like Crash Bandicoot, and instead allows you to move wherever you want and rotate the camera whenever you want. Well, I say you can rotate the camera. You can center the camera behind Hugo however much you want, but you actually have no manual control over the camera at all. What makes this a bit weird is that the camera automatically centers behind Hugo anyway, even without pressing anything, so pressing the button to center it is just a bit redundant. Why you can't just rotate the camera with the right analog stick, I have no idea. Remember, this isn't an early PS2 game anymore. This was released in 2008. There's no excuse to not have more control over the camera at this point. To put it into perspective, this is the same year that Fallout 3, Grand Theft Auto 4, Dead Space, Metal Gear Solid 4, and Super Smash Bros. Brawl came out. The camera here is unacceptable. Not only do you have no control over it, but it also constantly gets in the way, freaking out when it touches a wall and not allowing you to look down into pits to find secrets, and things like that. You also can't walk towards the camera without it trying to rotate behind Hugo, meaning that the combat is awful because you always have to face your enemies. If you try to run back slightly or move left or right to avoid them or their attacks, the camera will always try and rotate behind you. It just doesn't work, and most PS1 era games had a better grasp on game cameras than this. A bit of a positive here though is that the way you jump and attack is slightly better than in Lemon Twist. You're no longer locked into moving into a straight line when you attack or jump, and have a lot more control as to where you want to move. And with the more openly designed levels, this is a godsend. The jumping still feels off though in terms of picking up too much momentum, which makes precise jumps harder than they need to be. While it still feels clunky to play, I would say it's maybe slightly less clunky than Lemon Twist, but the camera here is worse, so I guess overall it balances out. Just like in Lemon Twist, every single level is formatted in the same way. You explore and find keys and switches, then go and find a door, go through it, and repeat that for every level across the whole game. There's these gems you can collect and they incentivize exploration, but disappointingly, you don't get anything for collecting these. There's no unlockables like there was in Lemon Twist, which means you're probably better off just running through the levels and not bothering with this. I did try to get 100%, but I missed a few gems on a couple of levels, and because you don't get anything, I didn't bother going back to get them. I mean, what's the point in having a collectible if it doesn't actually do anything? There are actually a few special abilities that are activated in a few levels, again, just like in Lemon Twist, but here, every single one of them are rubbish. At least in Lemon Twist 2 of them were decent, but here, it's bad. A returning power-up is the rollerball, but whereas in Lemon Twist this was maybe the best power-up, here it's just completely ruined. The issue is that with these new camera controls, you can't roll in any direction other than straight forward without the camera trying to recenter itself. Basically, you can't see where you're going, and doing some of the maneuvers it's expecting of you with this camera is infuriating. The rollerball's momentum also doesn't really make sense. It picks up speed insanely quickly and then doesn't slow down for anything, so you need to hit a wall before you have the option to change direction. The bottom line with this is that it barely even functions. It shouldn't have been left in the game in this state. One of the new power-ups is this balloon, which allows Hugo to float, basically acting in the same way as the helicopter from Lemon Twist, really. The thing is here though, there wasn't a single time where this power-up was used in an interesting way, and most of the time it wasn't even necessary to navigate the level, and if anything, it just got in the way. The problem with this is that you can't choose when to pop the bubble and land, and it only does it in specific places. But it also doesn't fly low enough to the floor to enable you to collect anything, so if you use this, you're just helplessly floating around, unable to attack or collect anything. It's pointless. The last power-up is this rock destroying thing where these balls rotate around Hugo and effectively make him invincible. Just like the mech suit from Lemon Twist, this is never really used in an interesting way, and it just makes the levels boring because nothing can hit you. You could stand still and let the enemies jump into you and you would beat them. I mean, what's fun about this? Sure, it's used in a few rare examples where you have to backtrack to an earlier point to destroy a wall that you couldn't before, but for the most part it's just given to you to make the game easier, it seems. It adds nothing, and that's my issue with all of the abilities here really. They add nothing to the game, and the game as it is a bunch of nothingness. This game's just so underwhelming, it's unreal. I mean, I'm struggling to think of anything more to say about it at this point because I've pretty much covered everything. Every level is the same as the last, and even when it attempts to do something different, like with the power-ups, it just falls flat on its face. The level themes this time around are disappointing too. I mean, for the vast majority of the game, everything just looks the same. You're just on a grassy island with beaches around the outside of it. Towards the very end of the game, you enter a volcanic area with lava, which actually does look different. But in order to even get to that, you have to go through so many levels which all look the same. Adding to this repetitive nature is the fact that yet again, the music doesn't change per level and instead only changes with the level theme. This means you can sometimes go through 5 levels in a row listening to the same goddamn music, and it's boring. I think that's the best way of summing up the game, to be honest. In a word, it would either be dull or boring. One of the two. There's other things I could go into here, like the poor sound effects, which don't match what they're coming from, and don't sound anything like what they're supposed to be. And for some reason, whenever you've got the rock destroying ability and you jump, it makes this weird water sound effect. Now, either this was just a poor sound effect choice, or the game isn't coded properly and it's playing the wrong one. But either way, it's terrible. To be honest, I might as well just stop here. At this point you've seen the whole game and it just isn't worth your time to keep talking about it too much. I feel like these games and how awful they are is just getting to me, and it's getting to the point now where I've accepted the fact that there's not going to be a good Hugo game. I went into this PS2 series positively, and it's beat me down game after game with how bad they are. But before I finally shut up about the Agent Hugo series, let's talk about the end of the game. Out of nowhere you enter the final boss area, and this has got to be one of the most underwhelming bosses I've ever seen. There's no music change, there's no build up, there's no cutscene, nothing. He's just stood there like a normal enemy and you hit him a few times when he shows a weak point. Then he escapes in a little rocket ship, you hit him in the rollerball, which is way harder than it looks because of the poor controls, and then that's it. I mean, looking at this boss's design, what even is it? An ant or something? His name is never said in the game itself, and it's never said what he's doing or trying to do. It's just some random freaky looking ant guy who Hugo smacks around for a bit. I'm giving Agent Hugo Hula Holiday a 2 out of 10. The graphics are okay for a PS2 game with a small budget, the combat is a bit more involved this time with you having a water gun, but it's hardly ever used. And the enemies sometimes having some unique attack patterns is cool too, but other than that, the rest is just either utter trash or just extremely mediocre. It takes the good things from Lemon Twist and either scraps them or just makes them worse in every way possible. Like the hub world idea and the unlockables and the levels designed around a power-up are just completely gone here, and it doesn't make sense to me. Even the characters and voice acting, which have been great over the past couple of games, have been gotten rid of. What a disappointing end to the Agent Hugo series. I mean, looking at this, you can see why this was the last one, because it's terrible. There is still one last little glint of hope on the horizon though, because there's one more Hugo game on the PS2 left for us to talk about, and it's Hugo Magic in the Troll Woods. Now, this time this one actually is developed without the involvement of ITE Media or NDS Denmark, and instead this is published by Krea Media. So with new publishers, maybe they'll breathe new life into the Hugo series. Then again, this is developed by Attractive Games, the same people that developed Agent Hugo Hula Holiday, so I wouldn't hold out too much hope. Then again, we're leaving the Agent Hugo branding behind us this time, so you never know.